Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the July meeting of the Delaware County Jail Oversight Board. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
to the republic
to the
for which it
republic
stands,
which is
one nation, under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Joining us remotely today is the Sheriff, Jerry Sanders. Sheriff Sanders, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
And we have Citizens Appointee, Ms. Deborah Love.
Hi, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Another administrative matter at the outset is to announce that we did have an executive session yesterday, Monday, July 7th. The board met in executive session, discussed matters related to emergency preparedness and the protection of the public, as well as confidential personnel matters. And with that, we can move on to the next item for today's meeting, which is public participation. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the board now, we have 2 rounds as usual. The first round is to discuss matters specifically on the agenda for today. And then at the end, we have another round of public comment to discuss matters more generally about the county jail. So if there's anyone who would like to address the board at this time, please do so. You have, as usual, 3 minutes per speaker, and please give your name and your municipality at the outset. Hearing no one, we'll move on to an approval of the minutes from last month's meeting. Is there a motion to approve the June meeting minutes?
Motion to approve the June meeting minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Second.
We have a second. Any questions or comments on the board meeting minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And with that, we'll move on to an approval of last month's reports. Is there a motion to approve the reports from last month's meeting?
I make a motion to approve the reports from the June meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Love. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the meeting, on the reports? If not, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And with that, we'll move on to the executive director's report. Director O'Malley.
Certainly. Just wanted to mention a couple things that the county is working on that hopefully will have a positive impact on the correctional facility. We do have a team working on behavioral health in the court system. The state is actually taking a very proactive stance in having all counties in Pennsylvania work collaboratively with their partners in the court system, including, our judges, our district attorney's office, public defenders, human services, mental health, substance use. And we are all working together to figure out ways that we can help prevent people from getting into crisis, aid people when they are in crisis, and hopefully prevent arrests and incarceration that are really structured and founded in behavioral health issues. So we're really looking forward to continuing that work. We will be attending a summit later this year, and we're putting together and updating what has a funny term, sequential intercept form, but we are looking at all those points of intersection where we can help divert people from the system and all those various resources we have. And we're really looking to do this from prenatal to, post discharge from the facility that helps people along the way to, again, be independent and be successful residents. So really looking forward to putting that together, highlighting all those services and working to fill in the gaps as we need to. We are also at a county level keeping track of federal and state funding. We are overdue for a Pennsylvania state budget, so we are hoping to get word on that, and we are looking at what any implications are for funding potential loss or changes or compliance issues with funding that we do get that we may have to have things implemented to make sure that we are in compliance. So we will be letting all of our department heads know how we will address those issues, but it is a concern, of course, because again, a lot of this can be dollars dollars that are used for prevention services. The correctional facility itself is funded primarily by the county general fund, so not receiving a lot of dollars. However, a lot of the federal funding, again, helps with prevention and ancillary services that help people be successful in the facility when they're discharged from the facility, and even prevent them from getting in the facility in the first place. So again, something we really need to be mindful of, and we'll give you more information and details as we learn them. And then I also wanted to mention there is a National Association of Counties, which is a national organization that helps counties really understand the policies that drive counties and what they need to be aware of. And that conference this year is in Philadelphia. It's going to be held this weekend, so I will be attending along with some other department heads and council members. So hopefully getting good information and try to attend as much as I can related, again, to human services, corrections, and I know they will be having special topics and meetings on those. So hopefully bring back and share what we're learning at that conference as well. So again, a lot of ancillary things. This isn't just what happens at the correctional facility, but a lot of work in departments helping to support and prevent what happens and people ending up in incarceration. And that's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Director O'Malley. With that, we'll move to the warden's report. Warden Williams.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, board. All right, let's dive right in. This morning's population, we had 1,082 incarcerated persons, which was a decrease of 15 from last month's meeting. 14 of the 16 weekenders were first-timers. We were pretty consistent in those that were ordered to weekend sentences within the calendar month of June. We had 502 commitments, 514 discharges, which has allowed us to maintain a pretty stable population at this time, which is obviously something that we are extremely grateful for as we're undergoing significant capital investment. You can see the anomalies in which we were not able to provide full recreation to the population within the month of June. I did want to highlight that on the 19th and the 20th, our agency, as a result of significant storms and power outages, had some disruptions to the recreation and the facility. That's why you see that the entirety of the facility did not have recreation, which is certainly an anomaly on the 19th of June. Typically, when we see those disruptions, they are isolated to particular units as it relates to a safety issue, concern, or incident. But the 19th was certainly related to that significant weather that we experienced in Delaware County. For our statistics, again, it's important that we provide this information each month. And so you can see that our trends in terms of gender, as well as those sentenced and pre-trial, continues to remain consistent, as does our age, population, and our race and ethnicity trends within the institution. For our monthly statistics and a review of those that are committed to the agency, you can see of those 502 commitments, 121 of those, approximately a quarter of our population, were committed under violation of probation or parole. 2 of those were state parole related. The rest were county probation related. We also had 52 bench warrants or failure to appears, accounting for 10.36%. We actually had a higher than average probation with new cases. So this is somebody who is re-offending or alleged to have committed additional crimes while on probation in the community, and they totaled 8.17. Usually we're in the 5 to 6% range for that. In terms of behavioral health statistics, and I greatly appreciate the county's commitment for the behavioral health review. A multidisciplinary review team is extraordinarily important. Efforts for diversion prior to incarceration are really significant and have a pretty profound impact, as does that reintegration efforts and discharge planning in the community. You can see in the month of June that we actually had a significant enough increase in our population of those with any mental illness. That's referenced as AMI. We went from 69.57% to 73.81%. Again, we also had an increase with those with serious mental illness. And for those that might be new and joining us, I have those definitions on the right-hand column of this slide just to provide a little context and background. Individuals with mental health conditions while incarcerated present a number of complex issues, not just for themselves, but in staffing and resources. services. We are not a licensed mental health treatment facility, but frequently required to provide those services. And so when we see an increase in population, that usually does increase in incidences and or costs in the institution. For additional behavioral health statistics and our medications for opioid use disorder, as of today, 165, accounting for 15.25% of the population are currently engaged. We actually had one of our higher months in terms of inductions. We had 22 individuals inducted into the program. Usually we're in the teens. We are certainly trending in higher volumes of individuals meeting those clinical requirements, but not necessarily engaged in services. And it's our belief that we're going to continue to see those trends in which we will have increases in inductions. Our employees of the month, we wanted to make sure that we shout out and highlighted the efforts of Officer Cousin, Classification Coordinator Moore, Sergeant Burke, and our Prison Advisor McCreary. All individuals were nominated for several reasons in the month of June to be recognized for July by peers and or their subordinate staff and or supervisors. So we wanted to certainly extend our gratitude for their efforts. Additionally, we had several individuals within the institution who have really significant time that we're honoring and celebrating. So we have several individuals with 20 plus years. Those that have more than 10 are represented on this. So a thank you to our disciplinary hearing officer, Belita Davis, with 25 years, correctional officer, Stacy Jones. She primarily works in our visitation department. So a lot of our visitors, the community, the public, as well as professional visitors are probably very familiar with Officer Jones. She has 25 years. Law librarian Dana Keith, that's also a misnomer. She also does our notary public services within the institution, which is really important. She has 19 years. Correctional officer Albert Johnson, who also serves as an executive board member with the union. He has 14 years. Classification coordinator Michael Moore, who is also recognized as Employee of the Month for 22 years. Senior records technician Michael Meyer, who you heard from our director Root last month about a lot of the efforts in which he does. He has 21 years, and operations technician Dan Ryder with 22 years. Dan Ryder has been heavily involved in a lot of the construction projects going on. For our training academy, we wanted to thank once again Judge Kroll, who was representing not just the Jail Oversight Board, but certainly the bench, and she administered the oath to the officers who were recognized at their graduation on July 3rd. We also swore in 2 of our sergeants, one who was with this class, you can see him on the left-hand side of the picture, as well as another who had completed her on-the-job training. We had discussed those promotions last month during the meeting. We did begin a class on June 23rd, and our next graduation is scheduled for August 1st, and we are continuing to recruit for our class that begins at the end of this month, July 21st. In the spirit of the many ongoings and happenings in Delaware County, we are entering budget season, and I had the privilege and opportunity of speaking during different budget committees. This was a part of the efforts of a budgetary task force that was developed by Councilman Womack to help, I think, not only just educate citizens on governance, the importance of the budget, the impacts of the budget, but engage directors throughout the Delaware County to really make sure that we've got a very firm understanding of process, but also that we have the opportunity to speak to not just our peers within county government, our leadership, but the community as well, and answer their questions. And I felt that it was important based on the feedback that maybe, because we do have people who watch the Jail Oversight Board meetings, that we could provide a little bit of that context, background, and information during this month's meeting. So this is a very abridged version of what was presented, but I hope would be beneficial. So please be patient as I give you some additional information. So county correctional facilities do so many different services within the institutions. We are predominantly, designated to receive individuals who are remanded to our custody by the criminal justice system, the courts. And these are individuals who are going through their adjudication process. Now, prisoner rights in the United States are protected by the United States Constitution, a very important document, and one of the items in which, when we take our oath, we are sworn to honor and defend the Constitution of the United States. While the entirety of that document is extraordinarily important, we typically highlight within our training procedures the following different amendments in which we're really kind of faced with protecting within our population. So, of course, the First and the Fifth Amendment, as well as the Eighth and the 14th, which typically are when correctional agencies find themselves in the court chambers. We are discussing whether or not we have violated the Eighth or the 14th Amendments. So in the Eighth Amendment, that's the protections against cruel and unusual punishment, and 14th Amendment is our protections of right to due process and equal protection under the law, which protects individuals from discrimination. Now, throughout precedents and history, we've had several landmark cases which have been extraordinarily important to defining what these things actually mean and how they're applied within the context of these settings. So we have these two cases that I've referenced. There have certainly been way more, but these are typically when we're doing kind of 101 basic corrections in the Constitution we're discussing. So Trovi Dellis, the prohibition of cruel and unusual punishments must be interpreted in light of evolving standards of decency that mark the progress of a maturing society. And this is important. This was established in 1958 during the Supreme Court findings of this, but this has changed so significantly and for very legitimate and good reason as to why things must be done differently within correctional settings. And I think our geographic and historical location being so closely situated to Eastern Penitentiary has taught us a lot about the evolution of carceral settings. But this really makes the courts examine somebody's claim based on whatever society currently believes to be acceptable. And this has a profound impact on a number of different services that are provided in the institution. Additionally, in 1962, while these protections typically applied to federal agencies, it was determined that these do in fact extend well beyond federal agencies, which would include both state and county correctional agencies. And so why is this relevant in the context of budgets? And it is for so many different reasons. And you can see some categories listed on this site. Primarily, we talk a lot about solitary confinement, conditions of confinement, food and dietary needs, and medical care. And later today, we'll hear from our vendor, Aramark, who provides food and dietary, both in commissary as well as in the dietary services contract. But these increased requirements, which are based under the evolving standards of whatever society believes to be acceptable or prudent, increase requirements for training for staff, the quality of staff that we hire, as well as what they're trained to do in terms of de-escalation, perhaps. We have increased mental health training, not just us. When I say we, correctional agencies have been required to increase training requirements and experiences. Many correctional officers are viewed much differently than they may have previously been. The term of guard is not something that we typically use because that is somebody simply watching, a turnkey, if you will. A correctional officer is a professional who has to fulfill a number of different roles in order to make sure that they're maintaining the care, custody, and control of the individual who is incarcerated. It's increased requirements for services in general and the type, the quality, the breadth of the services that are offered, staffing, the number of staff that may be required to execute any of these changes, as well as procedures. And so not just us, but many agencies have had to continue to evolve and to adapt. Conferences like the one that Executive Director O'Malley referenced earlier are so important for us in making sure that we're keeping up with what best practices are in the community and applying them to carceral settings, as well as making sure that we are in line with other agencies. And so in Pennsylvania, we are so fortunate to not just have the support of the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, of which we have liaisons and contacts, but we also have professional organizations like the Pennsylvania County Correctional Association, also known as PCCA, and the Pennsylvania Prison Wardens Association, which is represented by both county and state level. And this allows for our professional organization to continue to collaborate, make sure that we are up to date on what current legislation is leading us to, as well as providing us additional information. We're also bound by Pennsylvania Title 37, Chapter 95, which is written into state law, and our agency will be undergoing our annual inspection next week on July 15th. So we will be in the month of August providing a report on the status of that. Those standards indicate the minimum county correctional requirements. Those are available online. Anybody can evaluate those and be able to familiarize themselves. Another budgetary impact, and this was something that I received quite a bit of feedback that county taxpayers just simply were not aware of. Pennsylvania law prohibits us from seeking reimbursement for somebody who's incarcerated. So we cannot utilize medical assistance while somebody is incarcerated, which is how many services in the community are funded. The total cost of behavioral health care or physical health care of an individual while incarcerated is the county's burden, and that falls to the taxpayer. And again, we have to look at this within the light and standard of whatever those evolving societal standards indicate as being the requirement for care. We have to meet those needs. This law has been amended several times, and it was done so at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services level, where they were originally canceling and an individual had to fully reapply, which was lending itself to pretty significant delays in coverage. Healthcare is so important, and we were finding individuals who were reoffending or committing, and they were coming back into carceral settings without having these bridges for maybe behavioral health care services because they simply didn't have the coverage. Right now, benefits are currently temporarily suspended for a period of up to 2 years from the date of incarceration. So while somebody's incarcerated, there is an automatic process that is done to notify another governmental agency of somebody's incarceration. And then when they leave, it is essentially turned back on in terms of coverage. This is significant because our agency, and this was something also that was not very well known, despite the geographic size of Delaware County not being very significant or population density. We are the third largest county correctional agency by population. I do know I've said that a few times before in public meetings, but it's worth repeating that in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, our agency has the third largest population of individuals incarcerated at any given time. And that has been the trend for multiple years. Despite the fact that many other jurisdictions are larger or have much larger population sizes. So we can see that our average daily population in 2024 was 1,206. We'll just go by the whole number instead of the decimal. And you can see in terms of healthcare costs, which we all now know are the total burden of the county taxpayer, are implicated or influenced by a number of different things. And unfortunately, our population is not the healthiest population. So we are battling or assisting with addressing increasing stability, treating behavioral health conditions, significant mental health issues. We have individuals with chronic care, such as diabetes or hypertension. This requires medications as well as significant provider visits. We have individuals who are detoxing or withdrawing, medication-assisted treatment. We have individuals that must be sent to the outside hospital. And that was something that I was asked about because we had 280 individuals who were sent to the outside hospital. And I want to be clear, because I know earlier this year we heard from our health services administrator. Our health services team is some of the most incredibly skilled, wide variety of professionals who face a number of different things. They are very competent in what they do, but we are not a hospital setting. We're not licensed as such, and we do not have the equipment or the certifications that would be required in order to keep everybody in our institution. And thus, when their needs exceed the level of care that we can safely provide, we're obligated to keep them safe and get them to a community setting for treatment that is indicated. This is expensive. You know, hospitalizations are expensive. Something else that wasn't really known is that we have something called bedside arraignments. So an individual could be arrested in the community and a judge will do an arraignment that will place them under custody, not of that community law enforcement agency. So this person has never walked into George W. Hill Correctional Facility, but they are now the county taxpayers' responsibility because they've been arraigned, and they are now our staffing responsibility to sit on them in the hospital, which also is implicated by overtime costs. And so while this is a sample, it is a preview into the complexities of the budget and the burden, which is what we are here to assume.
You just interrupt you for
Sure
one
thing.
very brief moment. I think just two other points of context that I think are helpful for the board and for the public. One, I think, is just to understand that these numbers on population, despite the fact that, you know, we're still at the third highest population in the state, they're pretty dramatically down from where they were 3 or 4 years ago when I might be, I'm directionally accurate, but I might be slightly off in number. I think in 2019, the facility had roughly 1,800 average population. And again, I can be fact checked on that, but I think I'm pretty close.
Yes.
It came down pretty significantly early in COVID, and it came up a bit, but it's really settled in the same place that it's at now. So just to understand, the burdens they're still pretty dramatic, but it's a smaller population than the county was working with only 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the other point I just wanted to make, and it comes from just a sidebar that I just had with Ms. McDonald, is with regards to hospitals. You said about the fact that for medical issues that exceed what we can do on the premises, the question was asked, you know, which facility are they going to? And it's, I think, almost exclusively Riddle, but please tell me if that's not accurate.
No, I mean, Riddle is certainly one of the local agencies, but because they're not a level 1 trauma center, and because they don't have specialties that we may require, quite literally every hospital system is utilized. And that's not just by us, it's by a multitude of correctional agencies. We're not exclusive in the fact that we can't handle care. We do have individuals who end up in our Philadelphia hospitals as well.
Many of them in Delaware County are closing in FYS.
Well, there are additional burdens with the closures, and so for those that are listening that may not have heard that comment, with the closure of Crozier, there have been a number of implications of that. And while I can't say it's a cause and effect relationship, we are and will continue to watch things like behavioral health, in which we're increasing our population, and just the level of chronic care issues that we're seeing as well. Because when you continue to reduce available services and supports in the community, you tend to see increases in criminogenic behaviors. And again, that's not just exclusive to Delaware County. The less support there is in the community, the more that you will see in carceral settings. We are unfortunately the exacerbation of what is not working in the community. That's the population that is represented.
Yeah, I mean, it's been sort of said that the county jail is the healthcare provider of last resort. When it's not addressed in the community, folks end up at our doorstep.
We're the healthcare provider, we're the educator, we're the treatment provider from a behavioral health standpoint. We are so many different things, but yes, that's unfortunately what many county correctional agencies end up being.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I appreciate the additional commentary. This truly is for the benefit of all, so it's helpful to have that information. I think that there's, speaking of commentary, there have been a lot of questions, and perhaps we could do a more sufficient job of getting this information out there, because there have been some, wondering of why is the budget what it is, and it used to be less. Well, this is a direct correlation to that. When you have a population that's health needs have increased so significantly, and those health costs are exclusively the county taxpayers, that is going to increase the budget, and we can see that represented in objective data. To break down the budget, and this information is and always has been available. Delaware County does an excellent job publishing all of their budget documents, and that leads up to when council has to make very difficult decisions. These are constantly under continuous review prior to the submission, as well as the approval process. And so this information is publicly available, and so you can find this within Delaware County websites, but this is, the budget for the facility, and this was what was approved for the 2025 calendar year. I think sometimes there's a misconception of where the money is going to. 56% of our operating budget is personnel cost. And that is significant. It is the majority of the budget going to the nearly 400 employees that we have at the agency. And unfortunately, some of that is directly related to overtime costs. Now, in the field of corrections, overtime is not just on the basis of vacancies, of which we've made dramatic improvements in addressing. But it is very fluid, and it is something that we cannot control. And so this is not just related to staffing, it's related to the needs of the agency. So every single time we have to have somebody at a hospital, we send our staff to do that watch. And it is 2 officers per 1 inmate every shift, 3 shifts a day, every single day. And that is based on the number of individuals that are in the hospital at that time. Again, not controlled. This is not frivolous spending. It is required to get these individuals the medical care. And that's not part of the typical staffing plan for any correctional agency. And more correctional agencies are finding themselves staffing hospital details because the persons who are involved in the justice system have so many significant and or profound needs. Understandably so. We have individuals who may be in shootouts. They may have engaged in violent offenses that have resulted in significant injury. We might have somebody who was involved in a motor vehicle accident. And we did have somebody who was involved in a motor vehicle accident that was under the jurisdiction of Delaware County and spent more than 3 months in an intensive care unit, of which we had to staff. And so those are things that are unplanned, they are fluid, they are required, and it is part of our effort with public safety. We also have individuals who might require additional observation because they cannot contract for their own safety, and they require additional supports and staffing to make sure that they will not engage any self-injurious or harmful behavior in an attempt to take their own life. And so we have contributors to overtime for so many different reasons, but that, again, we could potentially do a more efficient job of articulating some of the contributors to a larger budget. Additionally, and I think this is a positive thing, we've invested so much in the employees at the agency, of which had not been done for such a significant time. And this was done for some employees through intensive labor organization meetings to arrive at a competitive salary. My understanding, and I've had this confirmed, is that the prior manager of the facility was starting officer wages $10 less than we currently are an hour. For some of their supervisory staff, it was $11.50 an hour less than what we're currently offering. And so those are going to have an impact on the budget because we're paying individuals competitive wages, increasing retention, hopefully attracting individuals to want to work in this correctional agency and become a member of law enforcement. While we haven't had as significant of an improvement to some of our non-security staff, we have had to address some of the wages being so uncompetitive and low. When you can make more at Wawa than you can at a correctional agency, that's a problem. These are skilled professionals who have degrees and experience, and they're working in an environment or setting that is not the most desirable. There aren't too many people who really seek out a career in the field of corrections, though typically when people do, you either learn immediately this is not for me, or you find your home, because this is some place where you can really gather a lot of meaning and fulfillment and have a career where you're contributing in so many different ways. And so we appreciate the fact that Delaware County, both the Jail Oversight Board and Delaware County Council, as well as the Executive Director's Office, has been so open to the advocacy and need for investment in staff. 21% of our operating budget is related to those healthcare services. 18% is related to administration, and that does not just mean me or my staff. That means uniforms, contracted services and licensing agreements, physical supplies for the environment, such as the clothing that the incarcerated population may wear, the bedding that they sleep on. This also covers workers' compensation, insurance, water, sewer, et cetera. And so that's why that's another large chunk of the budget. This is how we keep the lights on, so to speak, at the facility. And so that's a large portion. And then 5% is related to dietary services. And so I find it important to provide this information as we are all in a discussion preparing a budget for 2026 for review, defense, and advocacy. Just for some information, and I do know that Allegheny is at the bottom, and Allegheny is not a Philadelphia Collier County, but Allegheny is my former jurisdiction, of which I have great regard and respect, and it is one of the largest county correctional agencies, so this comparator information I do find to still be relevant. You can see the Philadelphia Collier counties. So to kind of talk you through, we have the county class size, the county, and all of their budgets are also all available. And so I went through all of their hundreds of pages of documents to find their prison operating budgets. I did not go through Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a lot different than we are. They have 4 buildings on State Road. They also have 1,500 pages of their budget, and I didn't want to provide misinformation, but I was having a difficult time digesting that. So I did leave Philadelphia out, and that's why they're not represented here. But ADP stands for Average Daily Population in 2024. And so you can see a smaller average daily population equates directly to a smaller operating budget. The variance to Delaware County's average daily population, you can see cited there as well. That is going to have a significant impact. And then I also included the variance to our budget. You can see that the majority are less in population as well as less in size. And then I've also, based on their average daily population number, as well as what their operating budget, tried to make a designation, and this is an approximation of what their average cost is, you know, to house an incarcerated individual. And so you can see we're budgeting pretty well in Delaware County as it comes to our contracts, our expenses, as well as personnel costs. Despite the fact that the budget is so large, so significant, I don't want to be dismissive in that or minimize, but you can see the comparators. And I think frequently, and I get this because as a taxpayer in Delaware County, I do the same thing. Well, this is my money. Where is it going to? I don't really care what they're doing in Montco or Bucks County. I'm not paying taxes in those counties, but to be able to evaluate kind of the whole picture, I think is helpful information at times. So again, those budgets are all available. Now, operating and capital are very different funding sources, and our agency has been a significant burden on both, though for very good reason. The agency has had deferred investment. Again, I know we've talked about that significantly, and we are finally addressing those things, which is not only going to make for a safer and more enhanced agency in terms of security protocols, but hopefully a better setting for our employees to be able to work in. So we are still going through two major significant capital investment projects. The roof HVAC project will be concluding hopefully by the end of this calendar year, as long as we can stay on schedule. The security systems and surveillance project will not be completed until 2027, but both are still going full force. We've had some challenges as it relates to the extreme inclement weather that we've been experiencing. The excessive heat, our crews have still been working. We've been making an effort to make sure that they have resources, ensuring that they have ice and fluids and hydration and shaded areas while they're conducting the work. But we are still ongoing, pressing forward. That is a priority because we need to make sure that the heat and temperature within the institution do not continue to rise and climb. We did work strategically with WTI Tremco to make sure that we were replacing the units in the order in which those units were failing most frequently, so that we were doing the highest priority to the lowest priority while recognizing they're all very significant. So we are still relatively right on schedule for our roof HVAC. Our electronic security and systems project, we are actually in some aspects of it moving ahead of schedule. Others, we are absolutely right on schedule. We are working together with some of our other stakeholders who may be finding themselves impacted a little bit over the next coming weeks and months, making sure that we're doing those direct communications. We have been able to communicate internally with employees to ensure that areas that are shut down or moving of populations is occurring. The entire facility is not getting all of that information at the same time, but as departments are impacted, we're making the effort to make sure that communication is going on. And a special thank you truly to our lieutenants and sergeants who have been doing the majority of that communicating out, either in roll calls, shift briefings, or making sure they're making those phone calls or radio communications to keep everybody safe in the institution. And then this is the final slide that I typically provide as it relates to cost recovery, just so that we make sure that we're getting this information to everybody. We do still have a very healthy balance of the Inmate Welfare Fund. And I know as we're talking about budget, sometimes there are additional conversations with why can't we, why don't we? There are limitations and challenges with spending this money. We remain very open to trying to find ways to make sure that we are not taking what is the burden or onus of the county. We can't pay for things that are the responsibility of the county through the Inmate Welfare Fund. That has to be utilized to benefit the population for something that is not a right, but might be a privilege or a bonus or a support for the population. So it's important to continue to emphasize that there is a very specific kind of designation for that money, and that it cannot offset, it cannot go to staff any of the operating costs. Now, typically I turn the presentation over to Deputy Warden Fowley, but I will be doing his. Do you have additional?
Yeah, I think before you move on, obviously you laid out a lot of information, and I appreciate your doing so. I think unfortunately dollars, particularly taxpayer dollars, are always present in the background behind the decisions that are made around the operation of a facility as important as George W. Hill is. So I think having this information, this understanding for both the public and for members of the Jail Oversight Board is really crucial. I want to pause and just see if there are any questions or comments from board members associated with what the warden laid out.
I do have a sort of a question.
Your Honor.
Yes, yesterday it came up that we had acquired some kitchen equipment, and we were in the process of getting that cleaned. And as a result of I believe, the hospital closing, some equipment became available. And I wonder if you could just discuss that a little bit and, what the plan is and what exactly equipment that was acquired.
Absolutely. So I did not bring the full listing or the dollar amounts, though I certainly can provide that to the board and perhaps during next month's meeting, just to give the very specifics. With the unfortunate closure of Taylor and Crozier hospitals, there was an opportunity, and I think that this has been something that Delaware County has been very strategic in terms of gaining assets without exploding in the financial investment in that. And so both hospital systems have commercial kitchens. They had placed items up for auction and you were eligible to bid. They had a very kind of publicized public bidding process of which Delaware County engaged in. And so we bid on kitchen equipment. Now, we will hear from Aramark. This has been a very big source of challenge within the agency. And I want to be abundantly clear. A lot of times when we hear complaints from the population as it relates to the variety of the menu or the types of food that they're receiving, that's directly related to the equipment utilized to prepare those meals. So we were able to get convection onions, tilt skillets, kettles. I'll get that full listing. Not refurbishing the entirety of the kitchen because we didn't have everything available to us that we needed, but being able to gain resources and assets from a commercial kitchen for our commercial kitchen that has continuous failing equipment was an enormous opportunity for us. So the plan is that we have to get all of the items. We disconnected them. We do have them in possession of the county. We've paid for them thanks to the purchasing department and the controller's office, but we need to get them industrially cleaned and then we'll get them appropriately installed within the kitchen. And we anticipate that happening within the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
All right, I would appreciate if you could share with us, the equipment you acquired and I know we had some equipment in the kitchen that was no longer operable, and I guess how the new equipment is going to help replace those items.
Absolutely. So I can say with certainty the tilt skillets were actually removed approximately 2 years ago because they were totally inoperable, could not be repaired or fixed. So they've just been completely absent or vacant. It's been a request from Aramark that we purchase replacement tilt skillets for quite some time. We were able to do that finally. And so that is one example, but I'll get the board the full listing.
Thank you.
I have a question. In reference to the air, when the full construction is completed, will they have air conditioning there? Because I notice when it's warm, that's when people get more aggravated and a lack of control within themselves. So I was wondering, will you guys have air conditioning there?
Yes, our full agency has air conditioning. It's the reliability and the temperature control that we've been battling over the last several years. So in every housing unit, we have multiple HVAC units that are on the roof. We have 4 blocks on each unit. 2 blocks share an HVAC unit. So we've been replacing throughout the years. I don't want to say we've been duct taping them because that's not accurate. We've been doing far more extensive emergency repairs to those units, but they are getting completely replaced. So our agency is fortunate. Not every correctional agency has air conditioning. We do. Ours hasn't been operating efficiently for probably a decade. I can confirm the entirety of my appointment as warden.
Okay, very good.
And look, I think I just wanted to extend upon a comment you were making, Warden, with regards to investing in our workforce. I think the efforts that have been made to invest in this facility are multifold, right? And the investment that the county has made in increasing pay is a material investment. It's one I think we're all proud to have been making to make the facility more competitive with, you mentioned Wawa, you mentioned other corrections facilities in the area. And this really goes to Penny's remarks around climate. But the investments that we're making in capital are extraordinary, and you made this point. We've said this before, but the collective investment we're making, and Director O'Malley, you may have the exact number at your fingertips, and feel free to add it if you know it off the board, and you probably know it. It's a large number, and what it represents is more has been invested in the entire time since this facility was built in 1998. It's a remarkable investment in really kind of catch-up infrastructure. And while improving the work environment certainly it's not a cure-all, it is a major driver in satisfaction of our employees. It really will make a huge difference with regards to a lot of the challenges that our corrections officers face with regards to those that are there. A lot of the challenges that we hear about every single day, they're a part of what's being invested in. So, again, it really isn't a cure-all, but it is a major facet of what has been our intention since taking control a few years back. And I wish we could sort of have it all be complete tomorrow. These investments are such that it takes a while, but, you mentioned security and that kind of over-encompassing block of investment won't be complete until 2027. But there are components of that will be complete in the near term. And I'm excited to see what that impact will have. So again, I really appreciate your laying all this out. I think it's important context for the public to understand what's going on. And I wish we weren't in the position of making up for underinvestment in the past, but that's really where we are.
The number actually totals more than 50 million since the county took over in terms of capital investment.
The committed, what's been spent
Yes.
thus far and what's committed to occur over the next couple of years.
Yes.
And while, as you said, the capital budget is different from the operating budget, the cost to service that investment does work itself into our operating budget.
Yes.
And that's the part that doesn't really show up when people look at the county budget. They don't necessarily focus on that and say that portion of it is really, associated with the jail. But it's significant. We are making a very major investment in this facility. And for folks who, are aware of the very significant tax increase that we were forced to put forth this past year, this is the rub, right? I think we would all love to satisfy even more so what could be solved with money. But that's where, when you're sitting in the seat of a council member who is responsible for what the tax budget is, that's really where we get into that rub come budget time.
Governance is incredibly difficult, and I don't admire, or I don't, I'm not envious of the position of county leadership to include you sitting, at the front, because you have to make incredibly difficult decisions, oftentimes unpopular ones because they have a direct impact, but they are weighed so heavily with factual information. You are balancing public safety, employees, so many different demands, of which there are never easy decisions to be made. This is the factual representation, as best I can provide, to hopefully provide context to some of those very difficult decisions. And we're committed to providing that information, hopefully in line with what is digestible by individuals who are watching or reviewing these meetings, so that that information is out there and it is known, and that we're getting that in the hands of people so that they understand how difficult these decisions are and why they have to be made.
Thank you, Ward.
I just wanted to quickly comment. I know you've all alluded to it, but it's worth saying directly too. You mentioned some of the things that are going to be happening, things that are happening. All the while, our workforce is and are operating in these conditions that are extremely, extremely challenging. And they have been waiting for a long time for these improvements, certainly before the county took over, but even in recent years as we're preparing, putting it in the budget, but having to RFP and having to get these things going, and even projects that are underway taking years to complete. I can't imagine how frustrating it is to know that we acknowledge, yes, you're in very difficult conditions and you're not going to get out of it for a few years. There is nothing any of us can do about that, but I think it's so important to express, and I think all of us have indirectly, but just to directly say thank you for working under those conditions where you can't walk away. You must be there. There is no, we talk about this at work. If it gets too hot, well, work in a different part of the building. Maybe you work from home that day. There is no option like that for you and your team. So just a sincerest thanks from all of us in the board as they work through this as well. And, being a construction site and having to double up certain things and move things around and, all that tracking that has to happen. So again, a lot of work and coordination for a very, very difficult job to begin with.
Well said, Director O'Malley.
Thank you.
Completely agree.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
All right. Any other questions for the warden before we move on to the next bit?
Sean, do you mind queuing up the presentation again? So again, typically the deputy warden who oversees programs and support, Deputy Warden Daley Fowley, typically provides this information, but I will be doing so this evening. So our average daily population, and this is focusing on second quarter. So each quarter he typically provides this information that would not be available if it weren't for the directors and managers underneath his supervision who are really facilitating a lot of these programs. And so an enormous thank you to them for their continued dedication and also for them providing the data and information. So within the second quarter, average daily population, 1,115. We had, you can see those committed and those discharged. We presently have 3 youthful offenders. We were averaging 2 for the large majority of the second quarter, but we do have 3 now. And so you can see the breakdown in month in which we have those commitments and discharges. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one because we have some follow-up slides for substance use disorders. And we do have several different programs within the institution. Within the substance use department, primarily Prep 1, Prep 2, this information is from Prep 1 pretty exclusively. So those participating, there were 186 within Prep 1, the majority of those being male, which is in line with the number of men versus women that we typically have in the institution. And you can see that we are serving the majority of those that are both either African-American or white in the institution. We do have some other populations that are represented as well, but that again is in line with our population trends. Our age range also does not deviate. So we're finding the majority of those that are incarcerated are between the ages of 26 to 35 and 36 to 45. And you can see that those are most represented within participating in these particular programs. What is likely not a shock at all is that the majority of individuals coming into correctional institutions, but specifically ours, are utilizing opioids as their primary drug of choice. And that's kind of a strange saying. Most people don't choose to be addicted to a substance, but those that they are maybe physically dependent on or primarily utilizing, we see represented most frequently by opioids. We've also seen quite a rise actually in stimulants, so whether that's methamphetamines or cocaine or crack. PCP has also been kind of not reintroduced, it's always been there, but we're seeing a higher prevalence within stimulant use in Delaware County. So the efforts to meet the demands of substance use are going to continue. And while we do receive quite a bit of support from the opioid funds, we may be proposing or seeking some additional funds to maybe increase our substance use department just to really meet the demands and needs. They're not decreasing in the agency. For religious services data, and you guys have heard from Reverend Coquelia Dunn in the past, both her and volunteer coordinator Perry Matero, two-man show. They do work with a lot of religious community organizations to support these services. 51% of our daily population participated within the second quarter in religious services and attended those services. And you can see, while there's a typo on this slide, and I apologize, our primary representation is Protestant. We do have both Catholic and Muslim as well. In requests and grievances, you can see, and on the on the far right side is the final quarter of 2024. Then we move to quarter one, and you're seeing, so quarter two, we had an additional decrease in the number of requests and grievances. Just to provide a little bit more information, and I know that Deputy Mastrati has given this in the past, individuals have the opportunity to submit a request for information. You can see the largest burden of those requests for information go to the case managers. This does not mean that the case managers aren't doing their job. That's the first line of defense for the incarcerated population. They are helping these individuals navigate nearly every issue or question that they may have while they're incarcerated, and frequently directing them or connecting them to the supportive agency or department who can address their needs. But they are receiving the highest volume of requests, while they're not necessarily experiencing the highest volume in grievances as it comes to percentage population. So a grievance is when an incarcerated person receives a response to their request for information that does not satisfy or address on their perspective what they were asking for, or they want to escalate this further. And so you can see the escalation of that. Despite this, 354 of those grievances were proven to be unfounded or invalid, meaning that there was really no merit to them. And then we continue to resolve or address. If somebody is dissatisfied with what they receive at the step one level for grievance, much like with any other grievance process, they can escalate that to step two, which will go to a supervisor level. And in our agency, that raises to the level of a deputy warden, or myself, the warden, can address that concern. I had asked our grievance coordinator to provide a little bit more context because we've talked about this in the past. What are the trends that we're seeing? And so we're seeing typical, it's not any significant anomalies that we are having missing commissary order items, which are refunded, and Aramark can talk about that, that they're not able to see or hear from or know what's going on with their legal case. That's probably the primary one that the case managers are typically answering. What's going on with my case? When am I going to talk to my attorney? Can you facilitate an attorney call? What about my probation officer? Can you print the docket sheet, et cetera? So that's an enormous demand, and that's not going to change. Account activity, so whether or not they can make phone calls or that they're getting deposits on their account. Special diet questions, meals in general, number of trays that they can receive. MAT participation is a big one. We get a lot of requests for people to engage in those services. Maintenance issues is certainly one. So if something in their cell is leaking, a toilet, a sink, something like that, they're turning that in. And then we also have tablet availability, which has been something that I know we've discussed as well in the past. So those were the trends within the second quarter. And we hope that we're going to continue to address and decrease the number of requests and grievances because we're better meeting with consistency the needs of the population. For some highlights, 20 individuals accomplished their GED, and our current passing rate is 62%, which is huge and really unheard of in correctional agencies. The average for most correctional agencies is well below 30%. You typically see 30% at the state level, and we are 62%, which means a number of things. We have 2 full-time instructors, one of whom is going to be recognized next month as the national teacher, and that's Colleen Gilmartin. And then we also have Jillian Kaspari. Joan Skursky oversees this entire department and helps do testing. in order to prepare somebody for a GED test, you have to feel confident that they're going to be able to, number one, sit with that test anxiety and be able to utilize the computer to take the exam, but that they're going to be able to pass all of the components. And there are multiple components for GED. We don't even see these passing rates in the community at 62%. And I think it's the belief that the staff have in their students, the overall preparation and investment that they're making. This is such a huge predictor for individuals being successful in the community and being able to obtain employment. This is a huge and profound impact to Delaware County, and it is done by 3 individuals primarily. We did have 90 newly enrolled incarcerated individuals. Again, there's a lot of investment and enthusiasm for this. When people are incarcerated, they could sit and do nothing. And we have a large number that want to work towards being there. It's not a desirable place, but when you're faced with adversity and you can't control your circumstances, but you can make the best out of it, that's the quality of an extraordinarily resilient individual. So we also hosted the 2nd annual Career and Resource Fair that occurred on April 24th. We had 164 incarcerated persons that participated, as well as 7 community organizations that were represented within the agency. And again, this is exclusively done to talk about career readiness, resume preparation and planning, interview, soft skills planning, talking to different organizations who are Second Chance Act employers and who would be willing to hire somebody in the community with a criminal record. We also had 2 members of the Substance Use Department participate in complete training through the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections for Thinking for Change, and that occurred earlier in the month of June. We do have vacancies within the Programs and Supports Department, and so we are still seeking 2 case managers, 1 substance abuse counselor, and then the 2 positions for the substance use grant that we were awarded. We are still seeking qualified applicants. All individuals can go to the website to be able to apply online. Are there any questions for that portion?
Can I just ask a question about a comment you made? You were saying that you're looking to potentially expand the substance use department through
Yeah.
the opioid funds. Is that something that's in the process of kind of, are you looking into it now? Is that something being done with the county manager to kind of see how those funds can be used? I guess I'm looking for a little bit more clarification.
Yes. So our substance use director, Pat O'Connor, who had provided, she doesn't just do substance use, but that is one of her job responsibilities, who had provided a presentation to the board. We had recently met and discussed a lot of her ideas, which are broad and incredible. Some being Thinking for Change, which is not only exclusive to persons with substance use disorders, but is a cognitive behavioral program. It's typically 12 weeks, and that is a great adjunct resource. And so we don't have the staff that could provide Thinking for Change. I believe it was you can correct me if I'm wrong, who was recently inquiring of what other than Prep 1 and Prep 2 can we refer people to while they're incarcerated? And that's a limitation. Again, this is not a comment on the staff. It is a comment on resources. And so the staff that are doing these services work extremely hard to provide a multitude of services. We'd like to provide more within these qualified individuals so that we can better meet the demands, because as we can see, the numbers aren't decreasing in those that have substance use disorders. The prominent population are those with opioid use disorders, and they are the highest risk for not only just overdosing, but fatal overdoses in the community, which have profound impacts as well. So Thinking for Change is one of the programs that is being recommended if we can gain additional staff and support. We've talked about increasing the number of classes or courses for Prep 2 specifically, because we have received some recent feedback from the courts and the public defender's office, as well as the DA's office, that we're not offering those classes routinely enough to be able to get people through their incarceration. And we certainly don't want to lengthen the amount of time that somebody's in the institution. And so we're going to maybe ask for quite a bit, but those are the 2 primary that we're really hoping to be able to meet the needs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could just comment on that with regard to, well, I'm no longer in criminal with prep 1 and prep 2. We would, perhaps someone would roll them in prep 1 and they were starting almost, I think, every week, but the prep 2s didn't. So you're right. I mean, if there's a lag period of 2 or 3 weeks, because we're encouraging them to complete prep 2, that's time where if we could get that so there's no lag time, you would avoid keeping those people incarcerated for whatever that period is, which is much better for them and also much better for our budget.
Yes. And so one of the things that has been, again, the feedback is always really helpful, not just during this meeting, but with a lot of our stakeholders who have brought this to our attention. The Prep 1 is an open enrollment. So every week we're admitting new individuals to that course. Prep 2 is a closed enrollment and it's a 12-week class. It's a curriculum in which individuals are typically stipulated by the courts to complete, whereas Prep 1 is more open. Previously, and this has been a lot of, this has nothing to do with me. Pat deserves all of the credit. She's been evaluating the timelines, the length of time, what the delay is, enrolling people doing dual enrollments to try and reduce those time periods. The real barrier right now is having somebody who is qualified to facilitate. So we can really only offer those courses on the schedule that we presently are because of those that are qualified to facilitate the groups. And the large kind of variations in classification because not everybody can be in the same room together. So with more staff, we do believe that we're going to be able to reduce the timeline, but that's really what it would be mostly related to is the number of people qualified to facilitate the groups. It's certainly not an unwillingness from the agency and we're in agreement. Oftentimes we are in government, we agree. It's finding out how to implement something that we find ourselves appearing to be at odds and we're usually not. If there are no more questions for me, I will introduce our Program and Reentry Administrator Kelly Shaw to the podium and she will provide her report. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden Williams. Good evening, members of the board and the public. To begin, grant-funded reentry program updates for the month of June. Delaware County Reentry Program, also referred to as Public Health Management Corporation, or PMC, had 3 referrals for the month of June. PHMC staff collaborates with participants to develop an individualized reentry plan. Participants meet individually with a peer specialist and reentry case manager bi-monthly. Service continues 60 days post-release. Enrollment is open to any Delaware County resident, regardless of charge, and also open to those serving a Delaware County probation. During the month of June, we had 2 active cohorts in the First Step program. To any new viewers, the First Step program is a job readiness course which connects participants to second chance company interviewers upon release. In addition, participants meet with a career specialist, behavior health advocate, career coach, and a peer specialist. Cohort 27 completed on Thursday, June 12th. 8 men signed up for the course and 6 successfully completed the course. Cohort 28 began on Monday, June 16th, and is still in session. 11 men signed up for the course.
You for a moment. Just, I want to make sure I understand. It says men. Is there any particular reason why, and maybe I'm just misreading that. Is it men and women or?
Well, they take the classes separately. 2 cohorts ago, we did all the women who qualified. And unfortunately, that was only 7, but we wanted to make sure to get them in a group before the grant fund expires.
Okay, great.
And it is tough qualifications to get in. You do have to be sentenced, which is less than 10% of the population. And you have to live in Delaware County, Philadelphia County, or Chester County. We are currently facilitating our second new Leash on Life cohort, the salad class. We are in week 8 of the 12-week course. And for new viewers, New Leash on Life is a 6-month career readiness program where dogs are rescued from a shelter and brought to live with the population for 12 weeks. During the first 12 weeks, ideally, each dog has 2 handlers. The handlers participate in 5 classes a week: job readiness, life skills, basic animal care, and dog training, in addition to caring and training their dog. After 12 weeks, the handlers are paroled and placed in a paid internship for the next 3 months, and the dogs will have hopefully found their forever home. And in the month of June, participants attended 8 career readiness classes, 7 life skills classes, 4 animal training classes, and 4 basic animal care classes. And I really like the photos on the left. I think it showcases the bond between the handler and the dog in such a short amount of time. And then also in the middle, we have one of the handlers not only training 1 dog, but 3 dogs at once. And then in the middle, we also have a group photo. Additional reentry updates for the month of June. The Delaware County Veterans Department engaged with 3 veterans. Our in-house reentry case manager collaborated with 16 sentenced individuals providing post-release support. Child and Family Focus Organization facilitated 1 class with our juvenile population. Probation and parole drug and alcohol liaisons released 59 to inpatient treatment. Maternity Care Coalition offered individual support to 2 new mothers. Electronic learning, self-paced free educational courses navigated through the tablet accomplished 2,046 learning resources completed on the Adivo platform, and 29 courses were completed on the CyberWorks platform. And lastly, Thresholds decision-making course had 15 participants in the month of June. Thank you. Can I answer any questions? Thanks.
And then our final presentation for this month, we've had a group of professionals who've been so patiently getting through my presentation. I'd like to invite to the podium Lisa Streckler, who's going to be introducing the rest of her team with Aramark. Aramark is contracted to provide both dietary and commissary within the institution, and we are extremely grateful that they were willing to come here this evening for a presentation. Thank you. Lisa?
Thank you, Warden, and thank you, Board, for having us on behalf of Aramark. We're proud to be here. So I'm just briefly going to discuss the restructuring of our support team in your area specifically. We'll start with Melissa Gano. She is our new VP of Operations. However, she came to us from the Ohio DRC. So she has a very lengthy background in corrections. And when she came to us, she had a very clear vision that she wanted to restructure the support team, not based on a lack of productivity or any other reason other than geographical feasibility to be able to get to our locations when they need support. That is why you see most of these people have changed their faces. It's just simply so that we can get to support your account at a reasonable rate of time. So we have Jackie Lashley. She is our area manager. She actually resides in Pittsburgh. She has 2 years with Aramark, but she has 16 years as an area manager previous to taking on that role. Then we have Ashley Keller. She has 20 years with Aramark. She entered into our corrections team in 2024. She is in charge of our finances. She is also a fabulous resource to come out to the field and help. Julia Dunning. She has 8 years with Aramark and 6 years in corrections. She is part of our NOS team, that is our Nutritional Operational Systems Support Team. She also lives in Pennsylvania and,
They
I
let her
confirm?
outside.
Okay. She lives in Pennsylvania and she is a certified nutritionist. She comes out to the site to help support. We have Cassidy Brown. She has 7 years as an HR background as the head of the Boys and Girls Club of America as the HR director. She came to Aramark Corrections in 2022. She is also local. Then you have myself. I am Lisa Strecker. I am the Corrections Director Trainer. So you'll see me in the George W. Hill facility often, supporting our new management staff, following up on policies and procedures. You'll see Karan Thomas. He is your new director in the George W. Hill facility. He came to us in June this year. He has 13 years of director in food and service prior to coming and joining the Aramark Corrections team. And then as his second, we have Miss Jackson. She has 15 years of food and service hospitality experience. However, she became a corrections officer in 2022 at the George W. Hill facility and came on board with Aramark as food and beverage manager in the end of 2022. So we're happy to have all of them here. And if you don't have any other questions for me, I'm going to hand this over to Julia from our nutritional team to give you some insight in our diets.
Right,
Yeah.
and on, can you just clarify which of the folks on here are specific to George W. Hill? Who are
So George W. Hill has a Karan Thomas is the food director, and Miss Jackson is your second in command. She is our food service manager. I am a support manager, so I'm there 2 to 3 days a week.
Got it. And everyone else is more regionally in support.
That's correct.
Yeah.
They're all local at this point to be able to support the facility when needed.
All right. Hi, everyone. Like Lisa said, my name is Julia Dunnigan. I'm a registered dietitian with Aramark. I'm here with Sophia Flesch. She is our director in the region. And if we go to the next slide. That's my job. I am going to briefly discuss the medical nutrition therapy program here at this facility. I am the main support dietitian for the Delaware County Prison, but we have a large team of dietitians in the region. Another one with me here today, Sophia is also a dietitian. So we have a lot of support that can help aid in really whatever we need. So what I do, I create the unique medical diets for this facility. And how I do that is by taking the general population menu, so the main menu, and making alterations as needed to fit the medical diets of the patients that we serve. So if someone has heart disease, diabetes, pregnancy, renal issues, I create all of those diets. And when I create those diets, I also create tray build guidance for the kitchen. So for every meal period. So they know exactly which meal items and portion sizes to serve to meet the needs of our patients. And I do want to make it clear that even though we are dietitians, we are not prescribing any medical diets. That solely falls under the scope of the medical team on site. But we do provide a diet handbook to the medical teams. And this includes nutrition information for all of our standard diets. So they are well aware of the nutrition breakdowns of all the diets they're prescribing. And if they have any questions, they can reach out to us as well. But that's really all I wanted to cover, unless you have any questions. Okay, then I'm going to hand it over to Matt.
My name is Matt Geiler. I'm not on your slides, but I was supporting Delco for 4 weeks now. I help out with training the new managers, and they just recently got 6 new employees. So it's quite a burden. So I'm from Ohio. I have 15 years with Ohio DRC. So I'll be supporting Delco for a bit. The 2 slides I'll be doing is Into Work. Into Work is the vocational commitment Airmark has to incarcerated persons. There's 2 phases or 3 phases in Into Work. Kitchen Basics is what we teach at Delco. It's a customized class, so we can make it last as little as 3 weeks or as long as 6 months if you're in Ohio DRC, just because they have longer sentences. We can also do the food service management. It's a little bit more of a deep dive into management of food service systems. They work alongside the Airmark staff, and at the end, they get a Serve Safe certificate, which is recognized nationally throughout the country, and it gives them great opportunities to get jobs. I know that some of the people that graduated the class, particularly 2 in Ohio, that I can say they got their jobs just because they actually had that Serve Safe certificate. So it's definitely beneficial. The other part I have, the other slide I will be doing.
So just a quick question. Does Airmark actually, do they hire folks who pass through the Serve Safe qualification?
Airmark is a second chance employer, yes. At the end of the class, and actually when they're released, they'll receive a postcard. There's a QR code on that postcard, and if they scan it, they will get connected with an Airmark person who will help them find second chance employment. So, yeah. There's also 2 other options that they have. We also offer a scholarship for the people that have graduated the program, and we offer a scholarship for their dependents. So they can also apply to that. And it doesn't have to be within food service. It can be any college or vocational school. This class has graduated three individuals in 2024, and then again, 3 more in March of this year. This program will be relaunched in September of this year. So hopefully there'll be a lot more participation. Do you have any questions about this? Airmark also provides offsite commissary. The commissary is picked and packed at an Airmark warehouse. It was a choice that was made by the facility to ensure security and limit other issues. The incarcerated individuals can order their commissary through the jail's OMS system, and it's downloaded through Airmark's core warehouse system. The incarcerated persons can place their orders through from 6 a.m. on Sunday, and then through Wednesday at 8 p.m. Thursday morning, we download to our system. It's picked and packed and then delivered to the facility every Monday. Every Monday, our 2 commissary workers sort it by units, and then it is delivered Tuesday through Thursday. And then Friday would be makeup deliveries for anyone that was out to court, had medical, or any of those issues. That's really all I have for commissary, unless you have any questions on how it's delivered or such things. Thank you.
I do have a question. I don't know to whom to address it, but I think, I'm sure you're aware that it was discussed here earlier that some equipment has been acquired from the closure of some of the hospitals in the area. And some of those were things that we haven't had for a while, but I guess of evaluating what has been acquired, what else would be prioritized as something that would be needed to add it to your kitchen equipment so that you can meet the dietary needs and also the need for variety. I don't know who of all of you to address that, Drew. Anyone want to comment on that?
I can comment a little bit on that. I'm not sure what equipment that she got, but she mentioned that the tilt kettles. She mentioned the tilt grills, the kettles, and the ovens.
Right.
The ones that are there are in disrepair, and it will be incredibly beneficial to our operation that we have this equipment, and it is very much appreciated that this equipment was acquired. It will make it less difficult for us to get out a meal in a timely fashion so that we don't impact the prison's operations.
So when you get this new equipment and you have it in, will you evaluate what other pieces of equipment you might need to in order better able to serve?
Correct. Lisa and the
recommendations.
Correct. Lisa and the food service director will work directly with the warden so that when we get the new equipment in, we can check on the functionality, make sure that it's going to work within our operation. And if there's something additional that we would need, we can just get with the warden and make those decisions, and then she can present it to you folks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you explain a little bit? You had mentioned something about ordering, placing orders. Are you talking about the administration placing orders?
No, ma'am, that's for the incarcerated persons. They place their order for any items that they would need. So that would be clothing, snacks, those such items. They place it on Sunday through Wednesday. We get it the following Monday, and then we deliver those items.
You're talking about commissary?
Yes,
Oh.
ma'am. I'm saying.
Just making sure we weren't talking about a restaurant.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay.
And I think just to stay on the commissary topic for a moment, I know that the lack of availability on commissary is a complaint that we do hear arise from the population. I think anything that you can speak to what Aramark's doing to control that and what can be done perhaps to further reduce the number of occasions where there's something that's not available to the population that they expect would be.
There's some things that aren't available just because we can't get them or they're out of stock. I do know that there is a menu revision that is in process now. So they will be doing that menu revision and then present it to the warden, and then we will go further from there. So I know that they're looking into it, and that menu revision is coming within the next 2 months.
Okay, well, I think it'll be something that we'll certainly be anxious to hear how that goes.
Correct.
I think one of the things that Aramark has been really helpful is evaluating the highest demand items, seeing if there are any comparators that can be sourced that might meet the needs. They would not be the exact replacement of a menu item, but that's what we're talking about in terms of menu revision. This is something that we hear. The portions of menu and pricing, which has been discussed at the past, is typically contractually related. So we do have to have some of those internal discussions and then present to the board for review. But it's both availability and then trying to find if we have some comparators that could be used as replacements. This is not something exclusive to Aramark. We've seen, unfortunately, kind of coming out of COVID, which I know feels like lifetimes ago, the supply chain demands have really placed a number of burdens on all of the commissary agencies in terms of product availability within institutions, and closures of warehouses or manpower to actually get product from distribution sites has also been additionally impacted.
Just to follow up on that. And so when putting together a menu, is it practice that Aramark will identify what a backup might be in the event that the primary item isn't available at a certain time? There's a fallback that they can make all available.
There's usually multiple backups for like a particular item. Like just for example, there's Doritos. Then, when you go to the grocery store, you have like nacho chips. There's usually 2 to 3 backups for each item, but it takes if Doritos is on their core menu and that becomes unavailable, then the following week, like the nachos would be available. So that's something that we do now.
Okay, and in each thing presumably is at its own set price. It might be different if the backup is perhaps not apples to apples.
Correct.
Okay.
With regard to meals, I would be curious to see what the current menu is and variety, and then how it changes with this equipment, and then ultimately when the new kitchen is restored. So at some point, if you could share with the Oversight Board kind of what the typical monthly menu is, and then how it evolves in those 3 phases.
Absolutely. So we do have the menus posted, and we will share those. I want to be kind of semantics is a thing for me. We're always meeting the nutritional requirements. It's usually variety, which is not available. And so we do that through the dietitian. We have menus that are posted. It's most frequently that we have to offer substitutions to what was being provided due to the lacking availability of working equipment. And so we see a lot of casserole dishes and things like that. But I think there will be a kind of a line of demarcation where we can say this was pre equipment and this is post equipment, and then hopefully have much better responsiveness, not just from the incarcerated population, but from staff as well, because Aramark is providing meals for our staff too.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask if you could, for anybody who's watching who's not aware, could you explain that about how staff is able to access food and their meals and how meals work for staff as well?
Sure. So Aramark is part of the contract and through their dietitian provides menus for both the incarcerated population as well as the employees. We service all 3 shifts. And so while the incarcerated population is eating 3 meals a day, we are also feeding staff at designated time periods throughout the day. We call it the ODR. It's the officer dining room. We have one in the institution. That's where meals are serviced from, and essentially assembly line where you can have a tray built based on whatever the protein and the additional sides are for that day. Again, this is very limited in availability, and it is not because we haven't had a very invested partner in Aramark. It's just that we've had a lacking availability of resources. So the incarcerated population meals typically go out in advance of the staff meals because there is the highest volume that needs to be provided in the institution. And because these are being placed on trays and going to those housing units, temperature control and getting them out and deployed is, obviously for safety reasons, a priority. We do have warming trays or chafing dishes available to us in our officer dining room where these staff are served. They are served under the supervision of Aramark staff, and these are prepared meals both by Aramark staff, but predominantly incarcerated individuals in the institution. We do provide payment for the incarcerated individuals. They do receive training, safety training. They are provided with the materials required to complete these tasks. And they are typically hired for specific roles within the kitchen. So they might be a designated prep cook, or they are a dishwasher, or a somebody who's assembling the trays in the institution. So it is thousands of meals every single day coming out of a kitchen that needs significant capital investment. And so that is and has been one of the projects that has been designated for the agency for quite some time. We just not have had the allocation of funds to complete it.
And staff, they can bring their own meals, but they can't go off-site to get a meal or can't order food in, correct?
Correct.
And what percentage would you guess that staff actually eat the prepared food as opposed to bringing in their own food?
I don't know, and I don't want to guess.
It's a pretty large percentage.
Pretty large percentage.
Okay, that's interesting.
Does the officers and also the incarcerated, are they eating the same foods?
No, it is a very close menu, but there are some deviations, and that's based on volume. So because we have to mass produce larger amounts for the population, again, if chicken's the primary protein, our sides or the assembly of that meal might be a little bit different for staff because we're doing significantly less for that.
Other questions?
No.
Thank you.
That concludes all of our presentations for the evening, but again, we're here if anybody needs us.
All right, thank you, Warden. Moving on to the last few items for today. Any new business or old business from board members? If not, we can move to our last round of public participation. So if there are any members of the public who would like to address the board, please do so at this time. And as always, please give your name and your municipality to start. Comments, as always, are limited to 3 minutes per speaker.
Kimberly Brown, Cowan. Here.
Ms. Brown, hold on one moment. Good job. Yeah. You can continue. Thank you.
Care, custody, and control. There's no care at George W. Hill. The medical department is understaffed. The inmates are receiving minimal care. Why are we accepting inmates that's just finished overdosing to be sent right back out to the hospital? Inmates are being beat up on a daily. Inmates has no water in their cell or outside their cell. Phone calls went from once a week to now monthly. So Judge Crowe, when you get that dollar bail for inmates to be released, how are they going to be released if they have no money on their books? I'm not allowed to have inmates make personal calls in my office. So how are they going to be released on that dollar bail? And that dollar bail can be tiring. It sounds easy, but it's hard for inmates to get out on that dollar bail. Control. The inmates are running the jail. The locks are broken, the light fixtures are broken, the outlets on the blocks are broken. The deuce, which is K2, is running rampant. I find it important to be honest, fair, and transparent when it comes to the county invested in employees. Employees have come and gone. The work environment needs to be improving. It starts with administration. Administration should be able to come around and speak with employees instead of walking past them. Also, the high salaries in the jail needs to come to an end. Judge Crowe, I see that you are very adamant about the having the drugs, the PrEP. You want PrEP 1, you want all these programs for substance abuse, but you have to get the K2 out of the jail. We have a deputy of security right behind us. We need to have a presentation to explain how can we stop the drugs. I sent him plenty of emails. There has to be some type of control. We cannot have a program if the drugs are not under control. They go to PrEP 1, they pick up their drugs. They go to PrEP 2, they pick up their drugs. They go to anger management, they pick up their drugs. Another thing, Aramark, I would like to give a big shout out to the young lady that's been working in Aramark for a long time. I'm surprised that's in the jail. I'm surprised she wasn't made director. Aramark needs to do better when it comes to proportions. The units have sent their food back to the kitchen because they got small portions yesterday. I've seen these people come and go in the jail. They're not physically in the jail. They couldn't tell you really what's going on a day-to-day basis. Everything looks good on paper, but we need to be accountable for the food and the custody in the jail. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments for today from the public? If not, any last board member comments for today?
None for me, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Love. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
We have a motion and I presume a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.